Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn our last three hiragana, wa, o, and n. So first up we have wa. Wa. To write this hiragana, we start with a vertical line going from top to bottom. Our next stroke starts about a third of a way down our first stroke and to the left. We go from left to right and slightly up. Then we come down from right to left. Then we come back up from left to right and curve around. O, o. We start with a horizontal line going from left to right and coming up slightly at the end. Our next stroke goes from top to bottom and right to left and intersects with our first stroke. Then we stop, come from left to right, and curve around before coming straight down. And our third stroke is almost a C shape that intersects with the end of our second stroke. And our last hiragana is n. N. It's important to note that this is the only consonant sound in Japanese that can appear by itself. You'll notice that every other hiragana we've written has either been a vowel sound or a combination between a consonant and a vowel sound. For example, ka, ga, ra, all a combination of a consonant and vowel sound. It's also important to note that this hiragana, n, cannot start a word or a syllable. It can only come at the end of a syllable. And this hiragana is all one stroke. We write it similarly to how we would write the English letter H, but we have it loop up at the end. But stepping back just for a moment, let's look at this hiragana again. You might notice that I pronounced it as O instead of wo, and that when I write it, I put the W in parentheses, and you're probably wondering why that is. Well, it has to do with how this hiragana is used in the Japanese language. Now, if you've watched some of my speaking videos on this channel, you'll have learned about particles, but just to reiterate, particles are short Japanese words, usually 1 or 2 hiragana long, that serve different functions in the language. For example, ka is the question particle. If a sentence ends with ka, that sentence is a question. Ni is our location and time particle, so you can use ni to state where you're going or to state what time it is, for example. Now, both of these particles are written exactly how you would expect. Ka is written with the hiragana ka. Ni is written with the hiragana ni. However, there are a few particles that we actually do not write this way, and I'll show you what I mean. You may remember that in our first hiragana lesson, I mentioned that with only a small number of exceptions, hiragana are pronounced the same way every time you see them written. Well, these are our exceptions. Our first exception is the particle wa, our subject particle, which is used to mark the subject of a sentence. We actually do not write this particle with our hiragana wa. We use the hiragana ha to write this particle. So every time the particle wa is used, we're going to write the hiragana ha, but we are going to read it as wa. For example, if we look at the word konnichiwa, we spell this word ko, n, ni, chi, and ha. That's because the wa at the end of konnichiwa is the particle wa. Another example is e, our direction particle. We use this particle to talk about the direction that we're going. But we don't write this particle with the hiragana e. Instead, we use the hiragana he. So if we wanted to say Takashi will go to school, we could say Takashi wa gakko e ikimasu. Notice that the particle e is written with the hiragana he. Also notice that, once again, our particle wa is written with the hiragana ha. And that brings us to o, our direct object particle. This particle comes between the direct object and the predicate verb of a sentence. And this particle is not written with the hiragana o from our basic vowel hiragana. Instead, it's written with the particle o or wo from our w hiragana. So if I wanted to say I eat sushi, I could say watashi wa sushi o tabemasu. And for the particle o, we are going to use the hiragana wo or o from our w-hiragana. And once again, for the particle wa, we use the hiragana ha. But you might be wondering, okay, that's fine, but why do I write this hiragana with the w in parentheses and tend to pronounce it as o? Well, the reason is I have only ever seen this hiragana used to write the particle o. While the hiragana ha and he are used in plenty of places outside of as particles, I have only ever seen o used to write a particle, so that's how I pronounce it. And now let's practice writing some Japanese words. Our first word is HEIWA, which means peace. HEIWA. He, I, and wa. HEIWA. UNDOU, exercise. UNDOU. U, N, do, and U. UNDOU. Watashi, I or me. Watashi. Wa, ta, and shi. Watashi. Nedan, price. Nedan. Ne, da, and n. Nedan. Alright, and that's the end of our lesson. Now you may be thinking we've learned all our hiragana, so this must be the last hiragana lesson. But actually, we've got one more coming up. In the meantime, work on your hiragana writing practice sheets, link in the description. Ja, mata.